Italy, you had lost 600,000 young men in the Alps, got very small border territories, yet had been promised far more in the Treaty of London. They got kicked out of Anatolia and didn't receive any lands there. The Turks were just that strong. The Italians were pissed. They began resorting to the drunk idiots for political advice.
We've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas.
Mussolini was an Italian communist who travelled a lot. When World War I broke out, he was all for war, but his peers didn't agree and kicked him out of their league. Changing his ideals very quickly, he founded fascism, the legendary Third Way. Focused on nationalism, authoritarianism, militarism and colonialism, he would rally the Italians around him, marching on Rome in 1921 and forcing the king to make him prime minister.
Let's go!
Europe's dictator number one. Germany surrendered, hoping for a mild peace deal, considering there were no troops in German core territory, only in Belgium and France. They got completely torn apart, shredded, reduced, cooked. The Entente never reached into Germany proper, only in and around Alsace region. Yet the humiliation would cause about the same damage. Bavarian communists with France, getting crushed in a few days. National Socialists would try to push on Munich, with Hitler going to prison for 6 months, writing Mein Kampf when he was there. In 1929, the Wall Street crashed, causing the stock market to crash, causing a massive global depression. Germany would suffer massive inflation, which brought costing a literal wheelbarrow full of money. Like today. In 1933, Hitler would promise everyone that he could fix everything, winning the election in a landslide. And after the death of President Hindenburg, he would ascend to full dictatorial powers. The Nazis believed in invading and conquering the entire world for leverage realm. In particular, Russia, with massive amounts of fields, ripe for colonialism. Europe has dictator number 2. In 1935, Germany would pull out of the League of Nations. Later that year, they reintegrated as Ireland after its 15-year occupation and signed treaties with the UK, allowing them to rebuild their navy. Yet their most worrisome attack would come in 1936, with the German remilitarization of the Rhineland and complete violation of Versailles. Britain and France did absolutely nothing to prevent this. France had an untenable political situation at home. The people did not want another great war. And Britain carried out a policy of appeasement. And under both Stanley Baldwin and Neville Chamberlain, they basically just let Germany do whatever it wants and hope that it didn't start another great war. Like a parent giving the child an iPad and getting confused when the child acts like a piece of shit. In 1936, Germany sent volunteers to Spain, including establishing the Luftwaffe, again in violation of Versailles, bombing many Spanish cities. In 1938, Austria was invaded, but yet still chose to join them. And the German forces were met with Nazi salutes and flowers, also in violation of Saint-Germain and Versailles. Italy, once opposed, did nothing to prevent it. The only one to protest this was Mexico. There was a plaza dedicated to them in Vienna for that. Later that year, Hitler would demand the Sudetenland, an area of Czechoslovakia with loads of ethnic Germans and defendable terrain. Neville Chamberlain, British Prime Minister, Edouard Daladier, French Prime Minister, Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini would fly to Munich to discuss peace. Okay, what's the deal? Yeah, we're just gonna let you have it, man. That's weird. So long as you don't invade the rest of Czechoslovakia. Sure. Hitler invaded the rest of Czechoslovakia in 1939, setting up a Slovak puppet state and giving Hungary some land. Poland would occupy Wallacing later. By now, the Wehrmacht was ready for the next target, the hated Polish state, with Danzig, Tordo, letting off Königsberg from the rest of Germany. Luckily, there was one state willing to aid in their conquest.
The gentle laborer shall no longer suffer from the noxious greed of Mr. France.
What's that guy talking about? I don't know, but he's got a megaphone.
We will dismantle oppression. For thy Lord will saw the foundation of independent mankind, even if it takes an eternity. With your support, we will send the hammer of the people's will crashing through the windows of Mr. France.
Russian Civil War and the death of Lenin, Stalin would come to power, genociding the Ukrainians and beginning several 5-year plans to satisfy his industrial development. Stalin would attempt to intervene in Abyssinia and Czechoslovakia, yet he was turned down at votes because he couldn't get troops there. In the 1930s, Stalin started the Great Purge, killing thousands of political rivals in an effort to stay in power. Most of his top generals would be killed, and the few that remained were ought to be subservient to Stalin, like Putin today. This will be important later. In 1923, Poland started war against Russia, taking eastern Ukraine and Belarus for their state, and in 1939, alongside Germany, was signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, agreeing to partition Poland down the middle and getting all their former lands back, with Finland, the Baltics, Moldova, all going back to the USSR. Hitler literally shook hands with his devil on this one. On September 1st, 1939, German forces would finally invade Poland. Britain would be forced to declare war, followed soon after by France and the Commonwealth.
Country is at war with Germany.
Germany would waltz through Poland, with the USSR invading from the east, with no Allied declaration of war on the Soviets. Despite brief Polish resistance, the nation would fall in little under a month. France and Britain could have started the second front by going from Alsace-Lorraine and going into the sparsely defended Rhineland, as French forces attempting to do so, retreating soon after, like the French bastards they are. British and French forces would not fire upon German positions to risk escalation after having the war last years. They didn't want to fire on an enemy during the war. The Franco-German border was defended by the Maginot Line, an impenetrable amount of defences impossible for early 1940s technology to dare break through. A period known as the Phony War would commence, with neither Axis or Allied powers daring to attack the other. Stalin wanted to flex his muscles, started a war with Finland on the 30th of November, which is best described as punching a wooden wall and breaking both your fist and the wall. While he did break the wall, he also broke his fist. So, who really won? Mannerheim would prove his excellence in this war, leading a near successful defense of Finnish Karelia. His own Maginot Line would stump Soviet defences. Finland would still retreat from some territory on the 13th of March though. You know, he still punched through the wall. On the 26th of October 1940, the Soviets would annex Bessarabia and Bukovina from Romania. A good chunk of German metal supply was coming from neutral Sweden into neutral Norway, through neutral Denmark. The Royal Navy was blocking any Axis convoys from entering Axis ports and started mining the waters around Norway, or threatened trade with Sweden. They also wanted to send volunteers to Finland and seize all the Swedish iron mines so that Germany could use them. Hitler would commence Operation Vasselbom, the invasion of Denmark and Norway to secure Swedish metal imports. Denmark was surrendered within 6 hours, with Norway taking 2 months to capitulate. The Kriegsmarine would lose a significant part of its fleet in the invasion, so trade with Sweden was secured. Germany recognized the impossibility of invading the Maginot Line and looked around for other methods. The Royal Navy made naval invasions impossible. The Swiss Alps made an invasion from there illogical, as it was basically their own Maginot Line. So the only route available was through Belgium. On May 10th, Holland, Luxembourg and Belgium would be invaded in Case Yellow, otherwise known as the Battle of France. France and Britain rushed to defend the front, fortifying the front except for around the Ardennes forest range, deemed impossible for Germany to push through. Yet of course, Hitler was pretty insane, so he pushed 20 Wehrmacht divisions through the mountain range into the Somme Valley, cutting off the entire British Expeditionary Force, the entire Belgian army and the French 1st, 7th and 9th armies. Civilian ships would take the perilous journey to get the BEF home, with the French and Belgians desperately holding off the SS and Wehrmacht from Dunkirk. Most of the BEF would come home, set aside the heavy equipment. France was surrendered soon after, and their entire 1st, 7th, and 9th armies, alongside the Belgians, would be completely destroyed. The British Empire now stood alone against the Axis.
We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender, and if, which I do not for a moment believe, this island or a large part of it.
Back in 1895, Japan had just defeated China in a war of influence over areas in their country and Korea, in particular Shandong and Manchuria. Germany, France and Russia kindly suggested Japan fuck off, which they did, only to see that those three same nations had begun to set up their own spheres of influence. And Port Arthur, otherwise known as Nantong, was started to be leased by Russia, which is a port Japan really wanted because it's very strategic to tell Russia to fuck off. The shogun had enough of this and invaded the Russian Empire, which he won in an astonishing show of force, Russia being forced to withdraw from Manchuria. More ammunition was launched in one battle than the entire Franco-Prussian War. Several small colonies in the Pacific after World War I was awarded to Japan, but the collapse of China into a civil war and various skirmishes with the Chinese, and an invasion of Manchuria in 1931, bringing it formally under Japanese control, led the Shanghai Shek and Mao Zedong to form a united front. On the 7th of July 1937, Japanese and Chinese forces fought at the Marco Polo Bridge, escalating into a full-scale war. In December, Nanjing, former capital of China, would fall under Japanese control, with the rape of Nanjing being remembered as one of the worst war crimes of the entire war. Then in October of 1938, Japan would storm Wuhan, forcing China into the interior. They put up stiff resistance, flooding the Yellow River and killing millions of people to prevent the loss of more land, which failed. These actions got the USA worried, and they began to start putting more of their fleet in Pearl Harbor. Hitler kind of expected Britain to surrender, now Europe was lost, similar to peace made with Napoleon and what they expected to happen in World War I. But the new British Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, flipped the bird and proclaimed that we will never surrender. To coerce the British into surrender, Germany would begin to bomb British airfields and take out the RAF in a 3-month-long campaign known as the Battle of Britain, much longer than the estimated 1-week KOs they'd inflict on their RAF. First the Channel, then the coast, then the airfields. A few factors led to the Germans targeting London and all the airfields: unsustainable losses, desperation for the war ending so they could invade Russia, and Churchill ordering a small bombing raid on Berlin. Under 10-hour bombing would bomb the city round to the ground. The civilians of the cities were forced into daily underground bombing shelter, and children sent out to the country. Churchill's war rooms were also forced underground due to the bombings, but still, Britain refused to surrender, and more German planes were getting shot down than British planes, with American supplies reinforcing their positions. Further blitzing, like that of Birmingham or Belfast, would impact cities much as London, and blitzing would continue until May of 1941. A Vichy French regime was set up in the south, basically an Axis puppet, though not officially in the war. The Free French regime would be set up in Equatorial Africa, and Britain would sail out to Algeria and blow up most of their fleet. Germany would be defeated, and dreams of conquering Britain in the short term would be squashed. In November of 1940, a US election was held between sitting President FDR, he had already served 2 terms, and the opposition went all woogie. FDR would win the election by a large majority. He'd start the Lend-Lease Act program to aid Britain in its time of need, allowing them to defer payments until after the war. Congress opposed the act, and so did the public, believing Britain should pay up front. Franklin Delano Roosevelt equated it to lending your neighbour a hose to stop a fire. Sure, you can have it, so long as you pay me back after. Germany saw that Britain was an island. To get supplies in and out of the island, they'd have to go by boat or plane, and because plane wasn't safe, they'd have to go by boat. but Germany had an idea to make none of those options viable. Just like in World War I, Germany would begin a submarine campaign upon the North Atlantic, cutting off supplies from the United States of America, lasting throughout the entire length of the war. Attacks like that on Convoy 1992 in 1942 showed that Britain and eventually America would have to fight the U-boats. Britain would be left starving and rations would be implemented to stop everyone from dying. Inventions like radar and the cracking of the Enigma code would eventually lead to the U-boats being obsolete, though they would still continue serving until 1945. Italy had just joined the conflict before the fall of France, with North Africa and East Africa becoming new theatres for the conflict. East Africa would get overrun quickly, with Ethiopia getting reinstated as an independent nation, though North Africa would still see fighting until 1942. Italian generals would attempt to push into Egypt, fail, get pushed back in Operation Compass despite farly outnumbering the British, 4-1 even, before Germany would send some panzers and Rommel to Italy. Rommel would be known as the Desert Fox, and he would play a massive role in the defence of North Africa and pushing into places like El Alamein. To try and get back some reputation and achieve equilibrium with Berlin, Italy would invade Greece before immediately getting pushed back by Greek forces into Albania. Germany would sort out disputes between Hungary and Romania, with Hungary being given North Transylvania, both joining the Axis, and Bulgaria kind of just forced to join too. Yugoslavia would bracely join the Axis, the British, the army, and American threats would soon see the Axis government overthrown. Germany would swiftly occupy the nation, with Greece following soon after. German battleship Bismarck, which like the British pride of the fleet, the HMS Hood, would be sunk soon after this. Following the fall of France, Japan occupied Indochina in September of 1940 to prevent the resources from going to China and to get the resources for themselves, like the rubber, to which Vichy France didn't do anything about that because of heavy German pressure. Following this, the United States would fully embargo Japan, cutting off most of their oil and metal supply to fund their war machine. They'd have to force the United States into a quick war for them to win, so that the Japanese could defeat them in a war, so that they could lift the blockade and take the resources of the South Pacific for themselves. In August of 1940, Chinese forces would successfully push back the Japanese. Stalin believed that Hitler wouldn't be so stupid to start a two-front war with Britain still in the war, providing air and naval support. But Hitler was pretty stupid. On the 22nd of June 1941, over 3.8 million German troops would invade the Soviet Union.
И эти люди, лишенные совести и чести, люди с моралью животных, имеют наглость призывать к уничтожению великой русской нации. Немецкие захватчики хотят иметь истребительную войну с народом СССР. Что же, если немцы хотят иметь истребительную войну, они ее получат.
Commencing the largest military invasion ever, with over 4,000 Soviet planes being wiped out in the first few months. The largest air battle of all time, would see thousands of Soviet planes being shot down with minuscule German losses, disabling the Red Air Force for the foreseeable future. Then came the German advance, killing and capturing Russians, Ukrainians, Belarusians mercilessly in some of the largest encirclements of history. 660,000 in Ukraine, 700,000 around Belarus, 250,000 around Luga, 100,000 around Crimea. The siege of Leningrad had 900,000 soldiers trapped and lasted an insufferable 2 years and 5 months. The German advance seemed unstoppable, but there was an intense problem brewing. When Napoleon led his campaign against Russia in 1812, he retreated entirely on Christmas Eve, with most of the fighting happening before November 6th. He complained about the cold heavily, and Hitler had forgot to equip his troops for the fight, thinking that the war should be done by now. But it wasn't, and now it was cold. So cold that the horses were left to die at the side of the road, and fuel frozen their tanks. Stalin had called in the Siberian elites to help fight in the extreme cold to defend against the Nazi offensive. And just like Napoleon and Swedes before him, Hitler was thrown from the gates of Moscow. Zhukov led a successful defense against the Nazis, and a counter-offensive was ensued. Moscow was firmly out of Hitler's grasp. Now it was Japan's turn to strike. On December 7th and the 8th of 1941, Japan would bomb Pearl Harbor.
Mr. Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate and the House of Representatives,
They're eating the dogs.
Yesterday,
that came in. They're eating the cats.
December 7th,
But I want to say one thing.
1941,
I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this
a
again.
date which will live
I did not
in
have
infamy.
sexual relations with that woman.
The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
Bringing America into the war. 5 battleships were sunk, 4 damaged, 6 smaller vessels, and 2,000 casualties, 68 of which civilian. Further attacks on the US out of Philippines, Guam, and Wake Islands, and on British-held Malaya, Singapore, and Hong Kong. But it also happened, sinking a good chunk of the British fleet there. Japan would start their rampage along the South Pacific. Hong Kong would fall on Christmas Day, the Philippines, Guam, Wake Island would fall around the same time. Thailand would be forced to join them. The Dutch East Indies and Malaysia were soon to follow, with Burma getting conquered alongside them. Japan had begun to bomb Darwin and were threatening the borders of India. The Lend-Lease program now extended to the Chinese, with airlifts over the Himalayas to get resources there.
You are Vader, with your little boots and cape, and helmet to cover up that burnt-ass face. You have the force to move objects. I am a force truly evil, even went back in time and turned you back as a prequel. Cause look at you, you're not even a real person. I preferred you in Spaceballs,